Welcome, this is Nerd Dad, and Factorio version 0.16 has dropped. And I'm quite excited. I didn't even know it was that close. I've been so busy working on a playthrough and haven't really been paying attention. And next thing you know, I've got artillery in my bag. I've got new train signals. I've got splitters that do things that I didn't know they were ever going to do. I'm quite excited with this release. I guess I'm going to have to start paying attention again. So with that said, I thought maybe I'd go quickly through some of the changes and talk a little bit about what they are and how they work a little bit for those people that maybe aren't playing quite yet and still haven't made a decision. This might be the one patch that makes the decision for you because, hey, trains with guns, I don't know what could be better. Anyways, let's get in there and take a look. Yes, that's right, artillery has dropped. This is just a basic artillery that you can have. Yes, there are some on trains, but we will get to that. I just wanted to show a little bit about how effective this artillery is and maybe give you a feel a little bit about its range and how you can make it shoot even further. So without further ado, you can see I've got an artillery piece set up here. I got a little feeder box. And in my inventory here, I've got a bunch of artillery shells. And if we look at the map, you can see I've got this bug base over here that's well outside of the range of my lasers here. And we've got another bug base here that my radar dish that I'm basically standing on top of can't even see. And there's some more bugs over here, and I have a feeling that when we open this thing up, we're going to be hitting all sorts of stuff. So let's take a quick look. We're just going to dump all our artillery shells, and yes, they are expensive. These shells are not cheap to make, and I think we'll gather why once we see what you can do with them. Basically, when you look at them, they do take a bunch of explosives, some explosive cannon shells, and some radar. I guess maybe to hone them in on their target, especially at longer ranges. So they're, they don't take too much, but they're costly. So you've got to kind of think about it. And artillery isn't available until a later game. If you when you go into your tech tree, I've already learned it obviously for this demo here, but you can see that even now to add to the shooting speed and stuff, it's a couple thousand a pop, so it's not cheap, and it wasn't cheap to build. So anyways, let's get some items in here. And what I find, the hardest thing to find with this thing is to kind of track the shells a little bit until you kind of get used to it. So why aren't I clicking on that? Because I'm on that. Come on. And shells. Okay, so what you'll see is the gun starts to automatically sort of get itself. I've got myself in map mode now, so I can actually track this. And it will actually fire kind of randomly at targets. It knows what it's doing. And we can actually watch these on the map. It's kind of nice. You can actually track them and zoom in and see where they're about to hit. And now you'll see that gun. Now that it's destroyed it, it's looking for a new target. And it will find something else. And again, this one's right off of our radar sight, but it's actually going to drop it. Now, one thing I would like to point out is you see all these bugs congregating? The downside to artillery is you basically tell the bugs, hey, I'm over here, and they will figure out and they will kind of rush you. So you'll sort of force their charge, which can be good, both good and bad. But just be wary that when you fire this artillery piece, you kind of don't want it sitting in the middle of an empty field. You're going to want to definitely have it behind some defense because it will pull the critters. And there we go. So, we got a feel for it. And this gun would actually have continued to kind of pummel away here and taken maybe a little bit of this out as well. Probably would have hammered on that as well. So the range you can see is quite a decent circle. It'll keep going and, kind of hammering away on it. Now, what I'd like to show you is how to shoot this gun a little bit further. All right. So what I've done is I've moved this gun back quite a ways. So where we were here, and what I've done is I've reset the map a little bit, and where I had that artillery piece was sitting up in this corner, and I've moved it for this demonstration way back into the middle of my base. You can see I'm like way back here, and the artillery now is loaded. I've actually got the rounds sitting in there. I've got 10 rounds. And it's not firing because it won't fire that fire automatically. But what you can do is within your map, within your map screen, you can use these artillery targeting remotes. And they're kind of neat because what I can do is I can actually grab them. And even if I kind of have a map like this, I can fire way off in the distance. So what I can do here, oops, I just want to kind of grab these there. Okay. And I can zoom in on the map and say, hey, I want to take out this blue guy and actually put a dot right on him. And you can see the artillery piece is actually logging in. And there it goes. And it's going to fire all the way from the middle of my base in there. And it's going to hit that right in the head. So you can actually fire this thing like 3 times, I believe, is the distance it allows you. And you can see that that's quite a hit. I can, lob that out here. And I probably could hit this guy. We'll try to see if I can hit this one here. And you can do it basically, from here. I can just kind of draw a little. You see there's a dot. And I can say, I want to take that out, that out, and that out. And you hear my gun firing. And there, it'll just start randomly. There goes, 2. And we can zoom in and watch it just kind of nuke them. Yeah, artillery is going to be a lot of fun. You can basically see I'm just going to wipe out this whole base at distance. There goes that base, and basically the bugs now will charge. So again, make sure you've got some defense up in front of you. But artillery at range, it's a thing of beauty. I mean, I never thought I'd be able to shoot stuff from inside my base that far. I was always thinking missile systems and stuff. But being able to use a big hunk of artillery is just wondrous. So, yeah, have fun with that. Anyways, so next I'd like to move on to artillery trains. So, when we look at crafting our artillery piece, it falls within the sort of ammo component. But when we go to build the artillery wagon, being a train component, it basically falls within your train. So if you're looking for it, it's just kind of hidden out over there. We just build that. It's pretty easy to build, as long as you got the parts. And you can see I've set up a little train here. And what I've done with this train is I've given it 2 depots, one at the north and one at the south here. And the idea that I had at first was I just want to send this train along and fire artillery on the fly. And I'm going to show why that doesn't work, and I'm going to show how to fix it up so that you can actually do something like this. So let's just get in here, and we'll grab that artillery wagon. Just drop him in there. There he is. Of course, he's not doing anything. We'll grab a bunch of ammo, and if we were to put a shell on him right now, he will look for the place, and he will fire, similar to the other places. So there goes your artillery train firing. And, of course, he will do exactly the same as the other artillery, get everybody all stirred up, and they'll come charging in. But what won't work is if I go and put this on auto and tell this train to start driving back and forth, and now if I feed an artillery piece in here, it'll just stay stagnant the whole way. And basically, there it goes. It just kind of runs off, and I jumped off the train. And it'll just keep going back and forth, and it will not fire that gun at all. Come back here. And here it comes. And we'll sit here, and we'll come back, and we'll still have the 1 round sitting in there. And if we all of a sudden shove it on the manual, when it stops, there goes the gun. So basically what you've got is the train needs to be in a stop position. Yeah, you know where this is going exactly. So what you want to do with it is you want to quickly grab yourself some train stops and basically just, give them a name, whatever. Let's call this Art Stop 1. And you can build a couple of those. And say you wanted it to stop both coming and going, sort of, both sides. Well, then that's easy enough to do. You just kind of flip the train station around, copy the name. And then when we come down here, we grab this and we just tell them, when you're heading down, add a Art Stop 1 and just time passed. And the other thing we know is we've got to give it some time to actually fire the gun. So let's give it 10 seconds. That should be enough. And then let's give this 10 seconds. That's the other thing, is it's not stopping at the end, so it's just kind of turning, and it needs a little bit of a break. And then let's give it Art Stop 1 on the way back as well for 10 seconds. Time passed. And you can put it as long as you want. You can sit there all day and have it hammering away and cleaning out bases. This is just more for demo purposes. So now we put this on automatic, and he's just going to go down south. And we're going to load him up now with a bunch of ammo. Just give him all 30 rounds, and then we'll see what he gets up to. And basically, you could set your train up and just have it kind of patrolling your perimeter. And he's going to just keep... Let's get our map up and running here. I'll just zoom in. You can watch, and you can see as soon as the train starts to go, the artillery piece folds back in. And then he'll come up to this next stop here, and he'll do the same thing. And it just kind of is continuous. You can basically just get your train set up, and he could patrol your perimeter. So anytime base, you could basically have it going all the way around and have it stop within range of each artillery shell and easily have it patrol and stop any of the bases from being built. So it's kind of a neat little way to kind of keep that, use the artillery in a train situation if you wanted to. I mean, you could obviously just build artillery pieces in each corner, i.e. what I did just up here. But, you want to have a little bit of fun with it, throw it on a train line and have some fun and let it do its thing. Yes, so now they've added a new train feature called cliffs. Now, it is actually quite neat because it does look like there's sort of a slope to the ground here, and it kind of goes up, and you actually would be up higher here, and you would actually have sort of a elevated position. But what they've done is they've kind of very trickily made it so that you can actually destroy these and almost have it insta-smooth itself. But cliffs kind of have a neat view. You can see that you could, you can think of all sorts of ways, if you're playing early game, you could have guns set up here and the bugs would kind of run into it and not be able to get up it. And I don't know whether they'd be able to damage the guns, so I got to play around with that a bit. But you could have lots of fun just, walling off little areas and basically having elevated fortresses. So that might be kind of something fun to play with. And imagine that with an artillery piece on it just for fun. You could have all sorts of good times. Of course, it's actually still on the same level, just so you're used to it. What is happening is if you actually get the cliff explosives and you watch, basically, you can see I'm in free play here, just kind of doing it. But basically all it does is the terrain stays exactly the same, and it just takes out those the cliff-looking item. And so basically, it kind of insta levels it because it's truly level. You kind of get where I'm going with that, but it really is going to add something new to the game because I can see running into a big long line of this, and if you're trying to run a train, either you got to blast through it or you're going to have to snake your way through it. But I think it's going to also be a lot of fun when you're running into bugs and maybe using the natural terrain a little bit more for your defense, which be quite interesting, I'm thinking. So yeah, I didn't want to go too far into cliffs because, it's just a terrain feature for us, but I think there's going to be a lot of, it's going to add something to the world. It's going to make it feel even more alive than it already does. And, there's going to be some benefits especially when you get some in an early game, and helping you with your defenses maybe a little bit. And who knows, maybe it'll help the bugs eventually when you run out there with a tank and you can't get up the hill. So anyways, I thought I'd just quickly show off that component of this update, and moving on. Yeah, the next component of the update is map preview. So it took me a little bit to kind of find it, even though it's a great big button right in front of my face. But anyways, all you have to do is get yourself through to new game. Basically you want to play new game and you get to this screen. You just generate a preview, and it's basically that quick. And to be honest, I'm really glad this came up because I was having the hardest time getting the cliffs for that earlier component. You can see on this map I have no cliffs at all. And I just basically sat there and kept regenerating and going, come on, show me some cliffs. And I went, oh my goodness. And all of a sudden, whoa and behold, I got this huge map, kind of like this one with cliffs. And I could quickly go, wow, that gives me something to go and look at. And basically, you can start looking at it and going, yeah, okay, that looks like something I want to play. Now, the only downside for me is I kind of like the experience of finding my resources, so to say. So I'm not too sure I would use it too much in the early game, unless I was really trying to do something specific. I might, try a map like this just to say, hey, I really want to play with the terrain. But I kind of almost wish the resources were hidden, but I can understand, maybe there could be an option for show resources, because I feel like I'm kind of cheating this way. I kind of like, oh yeah, there's lots of resources around here. I'm looking on this map going, I'm not going right, I'm going left, because there's just hardly anything over here. Good news is it doesn't tell you how much, so there's that. At least you're not getting a good feel. But sometimes, the size can be misleading, but sometimes it can tell you, like i.e., hey, there's a big chunk of oil up there. Anyways. So, but I do overall, I think I love the concept. I think it's a really good idea. I'm going to be able to look and say, hey, I want to play a world with some water and get a feel for it, and I can update that and take a look at it. So, yeah, a new feature, and I'm looking forward to playing around with it and actually doing a map with maybe something like this when I see lots of cliff faces. Maybe that'll be something we do in the next playthrough, just kind of add a little something extra. Yes, I'm liking preview. Filter splitter. Say that 3 times fast. Yes, really excited about this. Didn't really know it was coming, and I've really wanted something like this for a long time. I've often used the filter inserters to do this type of work, and all of a sudden I've got something now where I can combine multiple items on a belt and send them all over the place. This probably to me is the best part of this patch, and I tell you, I'm pretty excited about artillery. So can just kind of showing you what these do. So each splitter now has both an input and an output priority, and has the ability to run a filter. And so I want to kind of show a little bit how this works. Basically, we just can put our steel that we have on our line here, and it will do what it typically has always done, and it's just going to split it off. And each of these splitters is going to do what it does best. It's going to split them in half, and it's just going to keep splitting them and splitting them and splitting them. And eventually we'll find that more will end up over here because we'll split it off. And we're going to stop that one because we don't want you mixed up. Come here. And basically you can just show that it's all going. Now we see that we're messing this line up here, and we're getting all this steel in here, and we're going, oh, we don't want that. What we can do is we can come to this one, and we can tell it that we want an output priority of right. And what will happen now is all the steel will not go down this path. Basically anything coming down here will come down this path until this line backlogs. And once this line backlogs, it'll start feeding it off the other way. And what we're going to do to show that is we're going to come up here, and we're going to just basically throw a wrench on that. And we're going to just kind of run a quick path over to there. Get rid of all this. Come on, guys. Get over there. Just get all that through there, and then we'll just clip that. And then we can just kind of... And basically what you'll find is as this works its way around, we'll just have to open up the doors here a little bit and say, come on, give us a bunch more steel. We'll just open the floodgates, and you can see we're starting to backlog a little bit. Bump, 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 bump. And what will happen is once this backlogs, all of a sudden you'll start seeing it feeding off the other path. And so that is great if you start thinking about how you, in my playthrough right now, for an example, I'm trying to get my rocket launched, but I haven't really planned too well, and so every time I run tech, I'm finding I'm bleeding off the rocket. And so what I want to do is, something like this allows me to say, hey, keep my bus full all the way down to rocket, but once it's full, you can start feeding materials over to tech, and that way you can learn a little bit of tech, but it's not hindering my rocket. And it basically is giving it a priority sequence, which is just fantastic. So definitely something I'm going to be using there. So we're just going to bleed off this line really quick and just get all this. Droop, droop, droop. There we go. Come here, you. And what we can do to stop this from going any further is we'll just tell this to go input priority, output priority left. Sorry. We'll just get it all sent over the other way, and then we don't have to worry about it anymore. We can clean this up. Still getting a little bit used to it, and we'll just throw this guy back online here. Just get it all fed back into this main line like we had it, and we'll just get that done quickly. And you can see we're all going to get it back onto the left line. So basically now you can see how you can route things. Like, I mean, I've got it splitting off here, and if I had another inserter I could split some of it that way. The ability to kind of do all sorts of things is going to be just great. So let's just get that all backlogged a bit. So the next thing I wanted to explain a little bit is how input priority works. It works kind of just like you would expect it to. I'm going to basically make this so it's just a natural filter, and what I want to do is I want to put in an output on this one of right, so that's perfect. So what I want to do is I want to basically get a figure 8 going here and mix and match this green with this steel. But what I want to do is I want to tell this one that this green is more important than the steel, and that allows you to set up a priority sequence, basically to say, kind of like a train with an express train. I'm saying, hey, my greens are express items. Always get them on this track first, get them delivered, and then you can get the other stuff, because I really don't care too much about item B being my steel here. So I'm just going to kind of connect these up both, and I think what I'll do to show this is just kind of clip these wires so we can get them nice and backlogged here. And what we want to do is we want to tell this that, oh, come here, you. I'm having problems standing in one place. Basically, we want our input priority to be our right line, which is going to be this. And we're going to come in and we're going to say, okay, do it. And all of a sudden you can see the first couple took off with steel, and now it's going to say, hey, I can't take any of the steel. It's still going to feed the steel, but it's going to force it down the right. Now you could cut this line and stop that from happening. But basically, it's always going to allow the green to go through first. And basically now it's going to start mixing up because we've got this. But you can see how it's just going to keep going, and yeah, it's a wonderful thing. And now again, if we wanted to clean this line off, all we have to do now is do filters inserting. Filter splitting, sorry. So what we're going to do here is we're going to come down here and we're going to tell this output priority we want it to go left, but we're going to tell it we want it to do it with greens. I gotta be a little bit careful here because, actually, let's cut this line so we don't end up with a bunch of stuff. We're gonna basically just tell it we want to go right, we want it to go left, and we want that filter to be green. And what it'll do is anything coming through here now, it'll look, if it's green, it'll go right. If it's anything else, it'll go left. And so basically, we just run that on, and basically it allows you to clean stuff off of a line. So you could have multiple items on a line now, just hordes of items, and basically have these splitters going, hey, okay, now pull the greens off, pull the reds off, pull the blues off. You could just have multiple lines. Just, I can imagine buses now just being these masses of messes, and that could be a little dangerous, but it could be a lot of fun too. I'm looking forward to playing with it, and it's easy for me to just kind of come on and go, my output priority now is right, and I would like the filter there, and it'll basically allow me to clean this line up. And basically what's going to happen now is we're going to end up with all our green back on the original line. We're going to get our steel back on that inside loop, and yeah, it's these splitters and inputs, I can just see how much fun they're going to be. So anyways, I wanted to kind of show off how these work, just kind of a little food for thought on what you might be doing with these. I can see so many things that I'm going to try with these. I'm going to play around with them a lot. I can see that I'm probably going to really mess up some lines playing with this, but I think that'll be a lot of fun at the same time. So yeah, splitters / joiners. I'm really liking them. So now we've got logistical buffer chests. At first when I saw this, I started trying to remember what would I use a buffer chest for, and I kind of thought about it for a bit and went, what would that be? And then I recalled many times when I've been playing with my logistical system, I thought it'd be really nice if I could have a requester chest, say to my robots, bring X to me, and then I could put it into a requester chest and basically have it ready for some other part of the network to use that item. The problem with it is, of course, your requester chest saying it wants 50, as soon as you move them into here, the robots go right back to that thing and move it right back. And so what would happen is when I put for 50 items in there, it would be fed over and the robots would just go back and forth. And so basically this idea of moving something from a requester to a passive provider was basically just a great way of driving your logistical robots insane. And myself going, well, how am I supposed to do this? Well, how am I supposed to do this is this, a buffer chest. And so what a buffer chest is when you look at it, it actually has a logistical request, and it actually is a provider chest as well. So it performs both functions. So what it allows you to do is you can request from your passive providers, but then later on your requesters can actually request from your buffers. And what that means for you is that if you're thinking, longer range, you wouldn't have them 1, 2, 3 in a row, a couple spaces apart. But if you have a larger base, and I'm not saying this is a large base by any means, but if on this base I had sort of a central warehouse here where I had a bunch of passive providers, what I might do is I might have, little areas of these buffers before I sent things out to requesters way out, or vice versa coming in. I might have communal areas where I send in a bunch of stuff and then have it all sort of centralized into another place. So this becomes a really good way of sort of managing the flow of your robots a little bit with respect to, them having not to maybe fly from point Copper Depot here all the way across the map. They might be able to just come back and forth here in a little bit shorter runs, so you're not having guys kind of cutting corners, because sometimes that's a problem too. You have a guy running from here way over to here, and now you can actually send them in a bit of a waypoint. So there's some really good benefits to this. I'm not saying that would always happen. It depends on what you did to create that. But it is a way that you could start managing it a little bit more. I'm not saying it's always going to be perfect, because if I was to rip everything out of my buffer chest and then go to my requester and yank it out, it's going to just send it right from here to here. And if that's cutting a corner with a bunch of bugs, well, you're going to still lose your robots to your bugs. But if I always assume that I don't pull from here, then I'm going to have that as sort of it's going to be a mid-tier. Now, will it always work? Well, we'll find out. It's something I haven't really played with a lot, but I can see the potential behind. Lots of times I was like, I really need that middle point, and this is really looking like it's going to work. So how does it work? Well, just like typically, if I have this requester set up for 50, being this buffer, which is actually has a requester in it. And if this requester box is asking for 50, what will happen is when I put 50 in my passive, they'll go immediately to the requester. It has override. Even though they're both asking for 50, it doesn't look at the logic between the two and say, hey, go here first, then go there. It just goes to the requester right away because it's got the priority. But if I do put another 50 in here now, what it's going to do is it's going to take it to the buffer. Now, if I come along to the requester and say, give me your 50, what's going to happen is they're going to pull it out of the buffer and throw it in there. And assuming you've got another 50 in here, it's going to just keep doing this over and over again. So you can see that I can kind of grab things from here. They're going to go from your buffer and they're going to go to your requester. Now the one thing I want to show you is that you can turn that off. And what I mean by that is you can actually stop the requester from asking from the buffer chests if you want to. And I mean, there might be reasons why you may want to do that. So if I actually do this now and then pull out of the requester, they're going to go all the way back to my original passive provider. And if it's got nothing in it, then you don't get anything. So you can actually start to, you've even got more control over how you want to flow your things. I.e., hey, I don't want it always to come to this area for whatever X, Y, Z reason. I want it always to go out here and pull this off. Well, then you could be pulling from source, and this might be feeding something else. I don't know what you're using it for. But yeah, I'm really liking this. This is something I think that is, in a few games I've played and said, I really want that thing, but haven't been able to figure out how to do it. This is just golden. The only way you could really do this before was running a little bit of logic and running sort of little stop gaps in between without any sort of passive providers. But as soon as you dumped it back into the logistical system, unless you had another network sort of set aside, you always ran into this problem with it was picked up back here and your logistical robots were just running things back and forth from you again. So really like this ad, really liking the buffer. I'm going to have a lot of fun with it in the future, just haven't really got into it too much, but just thought I'd show you really quickly how it's working. And while this may fall in the much more category, I got to say this is a really nice quality of life addition. Train signals have been upgraded so that you no longer have to try to look at the block numbers. They're actually given to you as a visual representation. And this is going to save me a lot of grief when I don't quite get my signals correct. And if you watch my playthrough, sometimes I do that. But that being said, how does it work? Well, if you look right now, we've got this in an iron depot over here, and it's running well. And I have a uranium depot up here. And I've got it all kind of flushing together at a couple of junctions here. And what I've got is I've got this thing with its own block. Now, what is really nice is if I grab a signal, all of a sudden it shows me what my blocks are. And you can very quickly see the segregation of my blocks. I have a little tiny block in here, and I have a block for that siding. I have a block for the north-south over here. I have another block that's going into this kind of dual siding I have over here. And I have the main block coming into this whole area where there's sort of this Y-split. So when I go to connect a new line, it's actually very easy to make sure that I've got it connected. So I can basically just come along and say, okay, I want to connect this line to here, and that's great. And this is one of those places where I could have made a great mistake before, just not really noticing that that signal is short, because when I grab my signals here, you'll see, okay, that's looking pretty good. It's looking great, but now this block is a block, it's part of the same block, so no trains would go through here unless I fix this up. So you can basically just come along and say, okay, I need to drop something on there, and I need to drop something there. And you can see now I'm already segregating the block. Now, the only downside is it's yellow, which is the same as this, and you can make you think you're on the same block. But very quickly you can tell, I mean, based on what you're doing. It's only for the much longer lines that you might have a little bit of a concern, and you can probably quickly check it by just dropping a signal in part way anyways. But you can see right now I've added an extra line, and basically I've just made more of a complex block there and haven't really risked any of this as well either. And I think I want to redo that. Okay, let's just do a load and come back to train load. Three, 2, 1. Actually, hold. 3, 2, 1. Well, 3, 2, 1. Well, listed under the much, much more, I'm guessing, this new quality of life edition in 0.16 is fantastic. Before, when you were looking at your trains, you had to look at train blocks, and now they've given you a visual representation, which is so much easier. Just, you see it while you're laying the train blocks out. It isn't something that you kind of have to consciously go and look, okay, what's the number here? Did I get the number right? Have I goofed up? Do any of these other lines have a number? You can see it at a glance. And to me, this is just a great addition. It should have got its own spot, but hey, with this much being added, they were probably short on space. So basically, you can see here, I've got this iron ore depot over here. I've got a uranium mine up here. And you can see that I've got all these sort of switches kind of running everything off. And all I have to do is grab one type of signal or another. And all of a sudden, when I mouse over the map, it starts showing me exactly what my separate lines are. You can see that this siding has got its own block. This is a nice little block in this switch. I've got this Y coming up, and it's in its own block, and then another block going off this way. And you can even see a further split going off here in a different block. So when you go to build or add in a line, it becomes very simple. You can kind of go, okay, I just need to run my line in, and that one's there, and I want to run it to the other side. And this is the type of place where in the past I would have made easily made a mistake, especially if there's a tree kind of covering that signal. I might not have noticed it blinking and run off and done something else. Well, I could still make that mistake not noticing it blinking, but when I go to lay out this signal, which I would typically do for this block, I would notice that there's a bunch of blue, and this all of a sudden everything went blue, and I'm like, whoa, what happened? And all of a sudden I can realize it's because I've shorted this signal off here by kind of carrying that one piece through. So if you're a little less aware, like I am sometimes, then basically it's giving you a new tooltip to say, hey, you need to separate your lines out again. And I just kind of come in, and now I've made this block, and all I have to do is come back to my siding, and you can see I've already made it its own block, but I like to always throw this signal on. It's just a thing that I like to do. And basically you can now see, just by looking, grabbing a signal, I can see, oh yeah, I've made this block nice and complete again, and I've got all these on their own blocks. So I would suggest that this is a fantastic update. I'm not sure whether this came from a mod or how they thought about doing this, maybe looking at suggestions, don't know, but thank you very much, because I'm sure this is going to save me what happened to my train scenarios in the future. I'm sure I'll probably do it, but at least now I can't say it's because I didn't look at the block number. It's just because I'm me. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me for this 0.16 update. I can say that I can't say there's anything in it I don't like. I think everything I've seen I've liked, and really happy with it. So I'm kind of wanting to go down and look at 0.17 and see what they've got planned, because if we keep getting expansions like, little updates like this, I don't know what else to ask for. I mean, what do you ask for in Factorio 2.0? I'm sure they'll think of something, but this is just going to be great by the time we get to release. So thanks for joining me. I'm Nerd Dad, and I'm out.